Hi everyone, welcome back to Google Developers Live. My name is Claudio, I'm an engineer on the Google Drive Developer Relations team, and this is Gus from the Google Plus Developer Relations team. Hi Gus.
Hey Claudio, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's exciting to be hearing all about the new Google Plus and Drive integration.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're going to talk about a new feature we just launched that integrates my world, Google Drive, with Gus' world, which is Google Plus. So you might have noticed, and you might have read the announcement, that now when you share a document on Google Plus, what you see is a nicer interactive widget that shows more about the document itself. Let me show you what it is like, so it's going to be easier to talk about it when we all know about this. So let's go to my screen. What I have in front of me is a presentation that I created on Google Drive on my account. It's actually a presentation that I used to talk about Google Drive at a GDG DevFest. Maybe some of you were there. If I want to share this presentation on Google+, I can now simply copy the URL, go to my Google+ page, so go to the stream, and share something. I can put the link as I will put any other types of link here. So I put the link there. What is going to happen is that Google+ will check what's at that page, what's behind that link, and when that loads, we're going to see that it gets some information about the page. We're going to see how that works, and that information is actually shown in a nice graphical way. So let me share this, and then we talk a bit more about it. So my new presentation, you can write whatever you want here. Of course, this is a message that goes together with the document. And well, let me share it to an empty circle I have, just not to fill my stream with useless content, and then share it. Now you can see this new presentation is here in my stream. It has a nice play button. Remember, this is a presentation, it's not a video. So what happens when I click play is that the presentation itself gets loaded. And now, without leaving the stream, I can check all the slides. So I can go back and forth, I can see all of them, I can go full screen, I can jump to any slides, and so on. And if I need to, I can just click to the Google Docs link and go back to the Google Docs page where I can see this presentation and maybe edit it and edit it as any other presentation I have. So this is super easy. This is super smooth for users. This is available to everyone. And what we're going to talk about today is how this works. Mm-hmm. I think the best way to start talking about it, and remember, we are all developers, so we're going to look at the source of the HTML page that's generated by this document. So let me go back to the presentation. If I check the source for this document, by viewing page source, nothing special. This is something that anyone can do. There's obviously a lot of code, but if I search for some specific keywords that I know about, and now Gus is going to talk about them. Yep. For instance, I'm going to search for item scope. Item scope is a keyword in the schema.org world that we're now going to explain. And what we see here is that there is a number of properties that we marked that are available in this document that say that this is a presentation object, which is a type we defined to represent the presentation. It has a title, it has an icon, it has a URL, and it has an embeddable URL. Yep. How does this work?
So if you look at the schema.org content that's marked up across this page, what happens is when Google tries to calculate the way that the activity will look when it renders inside of the Google Plus stream, it tries to retrieve these properties from the page first, and then it uses those as signals, as hints to the way that it should present the content.
So we mentioned schema.org many times. What's schema.org?
Schema.org is just a way of annotating various things on the internet and giving all the structured data on the web kind of that presentation in a way that it can be consumed easily through search engines and through other sites consuming that content.
Mm-hmm. So this is independent of Google. It's not a Google-specific technology. It's not a Google-specific standard or any kind of thing. That is just us.
Yeah, it's not just Google. There's a lot of other people out there on the web that are doing it, and it's kind of just Google likes this. We like this format because it's a very versatile format for describing things on the web.
And so with this schema.org metadata, we can mark up some specific properties in the HTML. And these properties are not specifically related to the Google structure. So we're saying that that file, that page, represents a presentation. Anyone else can do it. So we're not saying that that is a Google Docs presentation. We're saying that that is a presentation, and that presentation has a specific title, and that presentation has a specific embed URL, and so on. And then what happens is that Google Plus reads the HTML of the page, finds those metadata, realizes that that is a presentation, and so it has a specific way to represent those data, so to render that data. I've shown you how you can check these items and the easy ways to view the source. So as we did before, you can just check the source of the page and see there are some data. Obviously, there are some other tools that can make your life easier. There is one which is part of the Google Webmasters tools. So that is at google.com/webmasters/tools/rich snippets. And with this tool, you can extract the metadata, the schema.org metadata for any given page. Let's try again. Let's see what happens if I open this tool and put the URL on my document. I can do preview. This tool is going to fetch the page, extract all the metadata that are there, and show them to us. So we have a preview here that shows some of those pieces, but we also have what we now care most about is the extracted structured data. What it says here is that, well, what we already saw. This is a presentation object. It has a specific name, it has an icon, it has a URL, and it's an embed URL. So with this tool, it's much easier for you to understand what Google Plus will find about your page. Something that is interesting here is that this is not specific to Google Plus. So we encourage people to use schema.org metadata, not only because if your type is supported, it will be shown in Google Plus, but also because we used those information in search. So whenever you search for something on google.com, we crawl all the pages, we index them, and we store the metadata for them. So if, for instance, it is hard for us to generate a snippet, a text snippet that summarizes your page, the schema.org metadata in that page will help us produce a better snippet, and so on. And we have other kind of information there that we can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And putting that schema.org microdata content it's a great best practice because it makes all the information on your webpage discoverable to more people than just Google. I mean, if anyone's programming against kind of parsing that data on the page, that schema.org microdata it's extremely useful in understanding kind of semantically what the content means.
Let's talk a bit about security and privacy here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is kind of the first question that I had when you showed me this today is kind of if I share something on Drive, and let's say or share something on Google Plus that is on Drive, and the content that I'm sharing on Drive, say it's a presentation that's only accessible to me, what would be the experience that the user would have when they click on that share link?
So the basic rule here is that sharing a document on Google Plus will not expand the permissions on that document. So if I share a document with you and on Google Plus and you have access to it, you will be able to open it. If I share a document with you, but a document is not shared with you on Drive, you will not be able to open it. Why do we do that? Well, the main use case, the main thing we want to prevent is this. I share a private document to a friend of mine, and that friend has access to it. Fine. But then my friend reshares the post I shared with him with someone else. I don't want that someone else to be able to read my document. So by not expanding the ACLs or permissions, we are preventing third parties from sharing your sensitive documents. So we really care about your privacy on your documents. So we don't want that for some reasons, any reasons, by mistake or by malicious users, your documents will be readable and editable by third parties. If the document we shared with you on Google Plus is not accessible to you, what you'll see is the usual request access page. So you will see the document. You'll see that a document is shared with you on Google Plus, but you will not be able to see any content. So if you want to be able to access it, you will have to request permission to the regional owner, and of course, if the regional owner grants you access, then you will be able to read the document.
So you're kind of highlighting something that's real clear here, and it's it's that basically what you're doing is you're sharing that link, and it's almost no different as though as though you were sharing that link on something other than Google Plus. It's like you were sharing it in email. But Google is rendering and presenting that content based on the schema.org microdata. And then it kind of just behaves in the way that the user would expect it to, as though it were working directly from Drive.
Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. Whenever we share a document on Google Plus, we're sharing a link. That's exactly a link like any other link. So just a link to something that we know eventually. We know that something is a document. And then we know we have a better way to present the document to you. But the content that is there is just not known at the beginning. So we share a link. It can be a video. Then if you can see the video, fine. If your link is behind, I don't know, a firewall, you will not be able to see it. Yep. Same here. If a link is to a document that is not available to you, then you will not be able to read it.
Cool.
Perfect. Okay, I think there's just one extra step to discuss. And that is, how does this work with the API?
And so that's actually a really good question. There's kind of two parts to it. There's the part where it's there's the Drive API, and then there's the Google Plus API. And so I did a little investigation this morning, sharing something publicly, which was in everyone's stream. But what you can do is you can still read the activity that gets created on the stream.
We can show it that. So I use the APIs Explorer to get the information about a specific activity, given the activity ID, and that specific activity had a document shared. And so this is a request. If you know the Google Plus API, it is very easy to understand. We just do a get to the specific endpoint for the activity, and we get some metadata here. But what? We don't see a reference to the document itself.
Yep.
So do you want to just explain a bit what we see here? And
sure. So some of the things that you're seeing currently is the format of these activities is that there's the activity itself, an actor associated with the activity, and then attachments that are attached that are appended onto the end of that activity. And so the attachment of interest is going to be the actual share that happened from that Drive post. And so if you look into the object array that's specified in the JSON at the end of this content here, the first one will actually be something that represents the post itself. And currently we're sending back a self link so that if you were using this inside of a third-party integration where you're reading this activity content, you could link back to the post real easily. What is interesting to me is that is actually getting back to that base URL from Drive, because then once you can do that, you can start incorporating the Drive API to get the the one true metadata from the actual object itself in Drive.
That's an important point to highlight. So this integration is totally new, so we still working on it, and we appreciate the feedback on it. And at the moment, the Google Plus API doesn't expose any information about the shared document. But we think it might be worth considering this addition to the API. So we will bring this up and see if we get added to the API. But assuming we get a reference to the document in the API, what we would expect is to only get an ID or a reference to a document, but nothing else. Well, maybe the title or the rest of the metadata there in the snippet, but that's it. Then we would expect developers to use that ID together with the Drive API to perform activities, to perform actions on the document itself. So if we add information about the document to the Plus API, that information should only be used together with the Drive API to perform manipulation on the file content. So don't expect, let's say, the content of the presentation to be available in the Plus API. There will be an overlap between the Google Plus API, the Google Doc, and Google Drive API. And also remember that the Google Plus API asks for some specific permissions that do not include reading your document. So if an application can only read your Google Plus API, it should not be allowed to read your document.
No.
If you want to do both, you will have to request for both permissions, and the user will have to specifically approve both, which makes sense, and it's guarantees security and privacy for your data.
Yep. So yeah, like you're saying, really having the document within Drive, and then making changes to that document also would then be reflected in the content that's referenced. So yeah, that's really, we want people to make all of their reads from Drive documents as opposed to directly through the Google Plus API. You avoid duplication of data, and also you kind of have that definitive privacy control that happens at the Drive side.
But so we're going to investigate this, and we're going to investigate on how to add these features to the API, and we might talk about this in a future Google Developers Live event.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So stay tuned for this. We're going to announce it on Google+. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention that we showed a presentation, but this integration works with all types of documents on Google Drive. So you can share a text document, you can share a spreadsheet, you can share a presentation, and so on. So obviously they will have different renderings. So a presentation looks like this. You can browse the slide. With a spreadsheet, it obviously looks different. And each of them has a specific UI. And the last thing I want to mention is that, so we added this new feature for Google properties right now. So you can share a Google Docs into Google+. But as we said, all it takes for us to understand what a document is to add some generic metadata coming from schema.org. And no one prevents other products to do the same. So for instance, many of you will know SlideShare. SlideShare is a very popular service for hosting slides. Nothing prevents them from adding those metadata, and we do not render that yet, but we're definitely thinking about doing it for other properties. So we need to balance between, avoiding spam and things like that. We don't want anyone to add random data there, and we then have to be forced to, capture those data or, do something to prevent abuse. But for instance, for important third parties like SlideShare or others, we can think about extending this new feature to support all presentations out there, all documents out there, and so on.
Yep. Yeah, you highlight a really good point. With schema.org, when you have your page marked up well, Google can do a lot with that content, a lot more than with that content when they have those hints from within your document as to what is in there. And so Google always tries to calculate the right thing to render, and over time these things change.
Cool. Okay, I think that with that, that's it for today for Google Developers Live.
Yep.
I hope to see you soon. The Google Drive team goes live again on Thursdays, and we might see you again here, or I might be joining you on the Google Plus events, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe we'll have you over on the Google Plus GDL here soon. It was a pleasure being here, and it's exciting to hear about all the new integrations that are happening with Google Plus.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See ya.